As we continue our tutorial series on how to work with the effects, filters, and transitions of Edius 7, we're going to take a look in this lesson on the color correction tools that come with Edius. And so let's open up a program that we've been working on here and take a look at some of the ways that we can affect the color or correct the color of your media. The color correction tools are all grouped together in a subfolder under video filters, so just open that up and then click on your color correction folder and they'll all show up here. Now in this lesson what we're going to do is just give you a brief overview of some of the tools here, and then in a future tutorial we are going to focus in further and spend a whole lesson on working with the three-way color correction tool, as well as a complete lesson on how to work with the YUV curve. So stay tuned for those. But in the meantime, let's just take a brief look at what all of these tools can do. Search here for one of these problem clips. Yes, here we have one here. Obviously didn't get the best white balance when we shot this shot. The way to start working with any color correction tool that's here in the folder is to drag and drop it and place it right on the clip that needs help. Now, you'll notice a couple things happened. One, we were switched right to the information palette so that we could start working with that by clicking on it. The other thing to notice is that nothing yet has happened. Even though we dropped that clip on place, no change took place. This three-way color correction tool is neutral by default. When you pop it on, nothing's going to happen. You have to actually open it up and start working with it. And when you start working with it the very first time, it's probably going to look something like this, especially if you're on a one monitor system where it is quite a small box. In fact, it is so small that it's a little bit difficult to make fine-tune adjustments as you grab hold of these little pinpoints and begin to move them around. You see that we're affecting the clip as we watch it there. But it's a little hard to get exact placement the way it is because the tool is so small. But we can open that up. Let's bring it over here and drag this corner down so that our circles are much bigger and easier to work with. But we do want to see our clip as we work with it, and so let's drag it down. And really, another tool that we should have open whenever we're doing any color correction work is our vector scope and waveform monitor. So let's put that up here. We seem to have lost our other tool. Let's click on it again to bring it up. There it is. Okay, so here we are, ready to start working with this clip. As we look at our waveform vector scope, we see that the clip could use a little bit wider range to start with. You'll see that it's not quite touching the 0 line down here, and it's just barely touching the 100% mark. What these represent, the 100% mark, is your whites, and down at the bottom, your blacks. And ideally, you want your blacks touching the bottom line. And so maybe the first thing we will do is experiment with our contrast tool down here. Well, this is a little difficult to work with on one monitor. Let's move this over here perhaps and move our image over just a little bit. See if we can't work with it this way. Now you'll notice that these three circles are representing our black balance, our gray balance, and our white balance. Now before we start messing with the color or trying to improve the color of our clip, what we want to do is first of all make sure that our blacks are black and our whites are white. Because if we try and use this color correction tool and our blacks are not black and our whites are not white, it's not going to give the best results. So over here in our black balance, let's bring our contrast down a little bit and watch our waveform there. Notice how the blacks are getting closer to that 0 line. And as we look at our image too, we can also see that our blacks are getting blacker as we move that down. You might also want to do that to the gray balance as well. And then the white balance, in order to move that closer to the 100%, make our whites more white, let's bring that up. And once you have something close to the top there, then we're ready to use the tool itself. And the way that you do that, let's just maybe move this over a little bit. One way to work with this is to, first of all, just click on the black radio button here, and then take your mouse and point to something in your image that is supposed to be black. And then go back down and choose the gray and point to something that's gray. And gray is a little bit subjective, and so if you visually don't like what you see the first time you hit a gray area, you might want to try a few other gray points in the clip. See if you can't get something that just at least starts out looking a little better. And then also hit the white and point to something white. Okay, and then again, visually, if you want to try and fine-tune that a little bit so it looks better to your eye, and this helps if you are sending your signal out to a high-quality broadcast monitor to visually get the best-looking shot. To visually make some fine-tune adjustments here, the gray balance is probably the best tool to work with. As you move that around, try and get something that looks good. Okay, so that's just kind of a brief introduction to this tool. We'll come back, as I say, to that tool in another tutorial. Let's go back to our effects palette and notice some other options here. Let's drag down our color balance tool and pop that onto our clip. And once again, it shows up in our information palette, and we can double click on that to get the adjustment tools for this filter. Again, let's keep our waveform vector scope open so we can keep an eye on how our adjustments are affecting the vector scope. And this tool basically gives you the ability to add a little chroma, drop back on the chroma. Notice what happens to our vector scope as we do that. You can adjust the brightness of a clip, either direction, add a little, drop down a little bit or add more brightness, and also your contrast. Notice what happens to the waveform as you adjust the contrast. Remember, ideally you want your blacks just touching the 0 and your whites coming up to touch the 100 mark. Okay, and also notice that in this color balance tool, you can add a little tint of any of the 6 major colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, red, green, and blue. Notice on your wave or your vector scope that these are also represented: red, green, blue, yellow, magenta, cyan. And notice what happens as you adjust these sliders to your vector scope. So if to your eye it looks just a little bit red, you might want to back off a little bit on the red. With this, right now it seems to be maybe just a little bit too magenta, so maybe give it 1 there, yellow. Yeah, probably leave that at 0. Now the problem with this color balance tool, while it is a quick fix when you're in a rush and an emergency, it may not be the most professional tool or robust tool. When you make an adjustment to the bright here, you're adjusting the whole clip. And the contrast, you're adjusting the whole clip. There's no way to, adjust certain portions of your clip. And so while it is handy to have a tool like this available, it may not be the most professional one. Okay, but let's take a look at some of the others here. This color wheel tool, let's drop it on, take a quick look. In my estimation, it's not really that much different than the last tool that we looked at. It has a little bit different interface, but notice here, just like the last tool, we can adjust the brightness, the contrast, and also the chroma. If we want to adjust the chroma, we go and point to this little dot here in this kind of a bullseye thing. If we want more chroma, we just slide it to the right. And if we want to drop back on the chroma, we just slide it to the left. And you can also adjust the hue by grabbing hold of this center area and start swinging it around. And it doesn't quite give the same adjustments that are available in the last tool. In fact, it's quite a bit more funky. And so if there's a particular look that you're going for that affects certain colors a certain way, you might want to experiment with this tool. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Monotone. Let's take a look at monotone. It's fairly self-explanatory. If you drop this on a clip, it's just going to make it black and white. However, you're not stuck to black and white. If you double-click on your tool there, you'll see that you can adjust this to almost any color of the rainbow by using your slider bars here. And it stays monotone, all right, no matter which direction you go with this. But you can pick almost any color of the rainbow for the monotone look that you want. And most people like to use this either just for the simple black and white shot or to make a sepia tone look, something like that. And this is kind of a handy look if you want to make something look older, kind of faded, or something like an old photograph. Like in this project, I have a number of photographs. Let's go back. That have come in with a variety of different looks and colors, and they've faded in different directions. Well, for this series of photographs, I'd like to give them all kind of the same look. And so what we'd want to do is drop our monotone filter on and open it up and maybe just give it kind of a sepia tone look. And when you got something you like, hit OK. And in order to be consistent and give the same monotone look to all of your shots, what you should do then is pointing your mouse just to above the clips over here. Let's maybe expand this out a little bit so we can see what we're doing a little better. Let's get open up our clips. And then take your mouse and just point above the clips themselves. Press down on your left mouse button and drag in a downward direction. You'll see that you're highlighting that clip. But also move your mouse to the right so that you highlight a group of clips. Notice that our information palette is still open and that our monotone filter that we've made adjustments to is still there. Now we can drag and drop that one and place it on any one of these photographs. Let your mouse go, and now we've applied that same monotone look to all of those photographs. Now we might still want to go in to any one of these clips and make further adjustments. Like we see this one is just a little overexposed, and so we might want to go to our effects bin and maybe go after our YUV curve, drop that on, and then click on that. And if you're familiar with working with your Y curve in Photoshop, well, then you'll know what to do. This is a much more robust tool than the color balance tool that we were working with earlier, because it allows you to make fine-tune adjustments to any particular area of the clip. For example, as you watch over here in our waveform, if we want to adjust and make sure that all of our blacks are coming down to the zero, well, we would want to work down in this area of our curve and make sure that our blacks are touching down there on zero. But then we want to get our whites whiter, and so we would grab the top part and start moving that up, and then maybe go after our middle part to bring that up to so that the whites are approaching at least the 100. And then you can go after the midtones by just grabbing hold and making another node there and making, well, you can see you can be very detailed in just how specific, what area of the photograph that you want to adjust. So see, we're bringing some detail back into the shadows there. So that gives you kind of an introduction to the YUV curve. We might also try working with our problem clip back here, the office shot. Let's open up our information palette, unclick the monotone, and we'll unclick the three-way color balance so that we're back to our original shot. And this time, let's, instead of the three-way color correction, let's use our YUV curve. Let's drop it on. Again, you'll notice that nothing happens. That's because we need to make our own adjustments. It's a neutral effect. Well, watching our waveform over here, let's first of all make sure that our blacks are black. And then going up to the top, let's get our whites to be white. And maybe bring some detail back into the shadows there. And then in order to work with our color, we can use these two adjustments here. Now these don't work the best when you try and apply an S curve like you're familiar with in Photoshop. It works better when you take the very top node and slide it in to move in one direction. Watch your waveform over here. Your goal is to kind of keep everything centered there. And then also grab the bottom one and start moving it in this direction until you get it starting to look where you want it. And the same over here. And if we want to see before and after, again, we can use our little display here. And this shows us the original clip on the left-hand side and the adjustments that we've made on the right. And as you move things around, you can see that more dramatically. Okay, so lots of tools that you can start to experiment with. And like I say, we will spend more time in future tutorials working in more detail, especially on the YUV curve, as well as our three-way color corrector. But, those are the main tools I wanted to show you. You might wonder what solarization is. Well, try dropping it on a clip, and you'll see what solarization does. Okay, but for now, I believe that does it for an introduction to the color correction tools of Edius 7.